Beitzah Tractate. Tractate Beitzah, page 8b, top of the page. Today's learning is in memory of Moshe ben Yisrael, Max Moses Epstein. May this learning be a blessing to his memory. May his neshama have an aliyah. Ha midiktani seifa im shachto ein mechasin es damo miklal dereisha beisle askinan. The Gemara challenges this from the fact that the latter clause teaches, and if he slaughtered it, one may not cover its blood. It may be inferred that in the first clause we are dealing with a situation where he does not have something with which to cover the blood. If he does not have anything he can use, why is it necessary to state that one may not cover it? And consequently, if he does in fact have material with which to cover the blood, why may he not do so, either with his basket of earth in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, or with the ashes of a stove? Rather, Rabbah said that the ashes of a stove with which the Mishnah stated are prepared only for covering the blood in the case of a definite obligation, but they are not considered prepared for a case of uncertainty. Although his intention was to use these ashes to cover the blood of any animal he slaughters, whether in a definite or an uncertain case, they are nevertheless not considered prepared for an uncertain case. The Gemara inquires, in the case of uncertainty, what is the reason that the ashes are not considered prepared? If the reason is that one makes a hole in the mound of ashes when he removes part of it for covering, in a definite case he also makes a hole. If it is prohibited to make a hole, that prohibition applies in all cases. Rather, one must say, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Abba, that the making of this hole is not considered prohibited labor, as he is merely performing a destructive act. If so, here too, in a case of uncertainty, there should be no cause for concern in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Abba. Rather, the Gemara retracts from the previous suggestion and offers an alternative. With regard to a case of uncertainty, with regard to a case of uncertainty, what is the reason that it is prohibited? The reason is that perhaps one will forget and perform crushing with this earth to ready it for covering. However, the same problem arises as before. If so, we should also decree against covering the blood in a definite case, because he might crush the earth. The Gemara answers, this presents no difficulty, as when one fulfills the mitzvah of covering the blood in a definite case, even if he performs crushing, the positive mitzvah of covering the blood comes and overrides the prohibition concerning the desecration of a festival. The Gemara challenges this. Say that we said the following principle: a positive mitzvah comes and overrides a prohibition in a case such as the circumcision of a child who has leprosy. Cutting off a leprous blemish is a violation of a prohibition. However, if a baby's foreskin is leprous, it is permitted to cut it off by circumcision. Alternatively, the principle applies to a case of a linen cloak on which woolen ritual fringes are placed, despite the prohibition against wearing diverse kinds. In other words, a mixture of wool and linen. The Gemara explains the difference between those halachot and the issue at hand. In those cases, at the time that one uproots the prohibition, he fulfills the positive mitzvah with the same act. However, here, in the case of covering the blood, two separate actions are involved. As at the time that one uproots the prohibition, when he crushes the earth, he does not fulfill the positive mitzvah of covering the blood. There's two steps. You have to crush the earth and then cover the blood. But by cutting the leprous milah, you're actually doing the mitzvah itself. The Gemara answers this is not difficult, as it is possible to say that when one crushes the earth, he covers the blood with it. That would be just a difference of opinion. He crushes the earth first, and then you cover the blood. But if you crush the earth, they're just kind of like reading into the words differently. They're just classifying it as a different act and the same act. The Gemara challenges this explanation from a different perspective. Ultimately, a festival is a mitzvah that includes both the positive mitzvah of rest and also the prohibition against performing prohibited labor. And there is a principle that a positive mitzvah by itself does not override a prohibition and a positive mitzvah together. Rather, the Gemara rejects the previous explanation in favor of the following. Rava said, one's initial intention is to use the ashes of a stove for a mitzvah that is definite, and he does not have this intention for cases of uncertainty. One may not use an article on a festival for a purpose which he did not have in mind beforehand. The Gemara comments, and Rava follows his regular line of reasoning in this regard, as Rava said, if one brought in earth in order to cover a baby's excrement with it on a festival, it is likewise permitted to cover it with the blood of a slaughtered bird, since he prepared this earth for a case of uncertainty, as it is possible that the baby will not soil the house. But he certainly intended to use it for covering the blood of a bird prepared before the festival for slaughter. If, however, one prepare the earth at the outset to cover the blood of a bird, it is prohibited to cover excrement with it, as he did not know in advance that he would require the earth for this purpose. He had only definite uses in mind, not possible ones, such as covering excrement. The sages of Nahar Balai said, even if one brought in earth to cover the blood of a bird with it, it is permitted to cover excrement with it, as it cannot be said that he did not intend this usage. They say in the West, meaning in Eretz Yisrael, that Rabbi Yossi bar Chama and Rabbi Zera disagree with regard to this issue, and some say it was disputed by Rava, the son of Rabbi Yosef bar Chama, commonly mentioned in the Babylonian Talmud as Rava, without the patronymic. Rava, the son of Rav Yosef bar Chama. And Rabbi Zera. The Gemara elaborates, one of them said that a koi is similar to excrement in this regard. Just as one may cover the blood of a bird with earth brought in for the purpose of covering excrement, he may likewise use it for covering the blood of a koi, as both the case of excrement and the case of a koi are cases of uncertainty. And the other one said a koi is not similar to excrement. Since the covering of excrement is common, it is regarded as a definite purpose in comparison to a koi, which is by definition an uncertain case. It is therefore prohibited to cover the blood of a koi with earth prepared for the sake of covering excrement. The Gemara comments conclude that Rava is the one who said that a koi is similar to excrement. As Rava said, if one brought in earth to cover excrement with it, is permitted to cover the blood of a bird with it. If he did bring in earth to cover the blood of a bird, it is prohibited to cover excrement with it. One intends to use the earth for definite rather than the uncertain purpose, and likewise in the case of a koi. The Gemara summarizes, indeed conclude, that this is the correct version of the opinions in the dispute. Rami, the son of Rav Yeva, said a different reason. In the case of a koi, this is the reasoning for the halacha that one may not cover its blood. It is not because this action would constitute labor, rather it is a rabbinic decree, due to the permission of its prohibited fat. If one were to cover its blood, people might think that a koi is definitely an undomesticated animal, and it is well known that the fats of an undomesticated animal may be eaten, whereas those of a domesticated animal are prohibited. The Gemara challenges this. If so, even on a weekday as well, the blood of a koi should not be covered due to this concern. The Gemara answers, on a weekday people will say that he needs to clean his courtyard, and that he is covering the blood merely to keep his courtyard presentable, rather than to fulfill the mitzvah of covering blood. The Gemara asks, and if he slaughtered a koi in a dunghill, a place used for the disposal of refuse, what is there to say? It will be evident that he is not concerned about its cleanliness, and that he is attempting to perform the mitzvah of covering blood. Alternatively, if he comes to consult the sage concerning whether or not he should cover the blood of a koi on a weekday, what is there to say? If the owner of the koi is instructed to cover the blood, would he not come to the erroneous conclusion that its fats are permitted? Rather, the Gemara answers, on a weekday, even if the matter is uncertain, the sages nevertheless say to him, go and take the trouble and cover it, as it involves the possible fulfillment of a mitzvah. On a festival, however, if there is uncertainty, would the sages say to him, go and take the trouble and cover it? If one was told to cover the blood on a festival, this would indicate that a koi is definitely an undomesticated animal. Rabbi Zera teaches the following Beitzah. Not only did the sages say that the blood of a koi should not be covered on a festival, but even if one slaughtered a domesticated animal whose blood need not be covered, and also slaughtered an undomesticated animal or a fowl whose blood must be covered, and their bloods became mingled together, is prohibited to cover the mixture of blood on a festival. Rabbi Yossi bar Yasinia said they taught this halakha only in a case where one cannot cover the entire mixture by one thrust of a shovel. However, if he can cover it with one thrust, it is permitted, since the entire amount of blood can be covered with a single action. It does not matter if one unnecessarily covers the blood of a domesticated animal while performing the mitzvah of covering the blood of a fowl for an undomesticated animal. The Gemara comments, Pshita, it is obvious that in this case, since he covers all the blood in a single action, clearly performs the mitzvah. The Gemara answers, this ruling is nevertheless necessary, lest you say that we should decree and prohibit even one thrust due to the possibility that he might perform two thrusts. Therefore, Rabbi Yossi bar Yasinia teaches us that this concern is not to be taken into account. Rabbah said, if one slaughtered a bird on the eve of a festival, one may not cover its blood on the festival itself.